Okay, let's get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie Smith. I'm from our platform product marketing team here at Yext. And I'm so excited to welcome you today to our webinar where we'll be talking about what Yext's new integration with Apple Business Connect's API means for your organization. And before we get started, I also just want to make the note that this is being recorded. And we will, if you registered for the webinar, we will send this out after. So if anyone on your team wasn't able to make it, or if you have to drop halfway through, not a problem. You can always find the recording after. So today, really excited to be joined by Calvin, Roy, and Teddy. Calvin and Teddy from product management and Roy from technology operations. And so they're going to be our main presenters today. Really excited to hear their expertise. And additionally, we're also really lucky to have two members of our technical partner management team, Chris and Lorenzo, who are also experts. So we just wanted all hands on deck here. Everyone wanted to be a part of this really exciting conversation, hear what questions you have, add some extra context. Because as you'll hear from Roy, this was a huge team effort that we're really excited to be sharing with you today. And so as for our agenda, we'll first go through, the actual integration, what's new here about our exciting new integration with Apple Business Connect. And then we'll drill into a lot of the technical details with you. So sort of what are Apple Business Connect accounts? How do you delegate? We'll talk about action links, showcase posting. We're going to go through some FAQs of just some questions we've been receiving because we think they'll be helpful to answer for the entire audience. And then at the end, we will open it up to questions from all of you. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A module. Throughout the presentation, anytime, feel free to enter the questions that you have whenever you think of them, and then we'll save time at the end to go through them. And with that, I will hand it over to Roy.
All right. Thank you, Jessie. I'm super excited to be here today and talk about two of my favorite topics, Apple Maps and listings. We have a ton of great content coming up, and I promise that if you stick around, you will leave this webinar with knowledge and tools that will help you maximize your listings presence on Apple Maps. Apple's announcement on January 11th was absolutely transformative. Seemingly overnight, Apple completely transformed the way it interacts with businesses of all sizes, allowing them to fully control their listings and releasing new features that let businesses really stand out from the competition. These changes will have an immense positive impact on Apple listings for years to come, making them both more richer and more accurate, and improving the overall user experience on Apple Maps and other Apple products like Siri. But this change definitely did not happen overnight. So before we dive into the details, I want to take a moment and acknowledge some of the teams that have worked so hard to make this launch successful. First and foremost, a huge thank you to the amazing team at Apple Maps for choosing us as one of their launch partners. I've been building integrations of all types for much of my career. And if there's one thing I've learned is that the best integrations are built upon the best relationships. And so I could not be more grateful for the incredible collaboration with Apple over the past few months. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge the many teams at Yext who've worked tirelessly to make this transition as smooth as possible for our clients. A project of this size and complexity requires a unique combination of talent, knowledge, and experience, which is exactly where Yext shines. From our product to engineering teams, our operations to marketing, and down to our product partnerships team, everyone came together and executed beautifully. Last but not least, I actually want to thank the same teams yet again, this time for all of their future contributions, because the fact is that this is only the beginning, and this integration will continue to evolve over time. And I can assure you that Yext is going to be here and make sure our clients are positioned for continued success. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Calvin to go over some of the details of the integration.
All right, thanks, Roy. Now we're going to get into what our integration looks like and how business accounts work. We'll go through a ton of details today to help everyone get started and talk about the changes. So just to recap, Roy did talk about this quite a bit, but on January 11th, Apple introduced Business Connect. You can think of this as Apple's version of a Google Business Profile or a Bing Places account. Basically, it's a way that you can make an account with Apple to manage all the facts about your business. With that, they also released a pretty robust set of APIs, and that is what Yext has integrated with. We spent quite a bit of time integrating with these APIs to make everything happen automatically, but there are a few different ways that you can have your account set up. Now, previously, we had a submission-based integration with Apple, and this API will be a pretty big upgrade over that. We basically now have this direct integration that will send data from the knowledge graph over to Apple Business Connect, and thus all that data will show up on Apple Maps. And having that direct integration does come with quite a few benefits. We could talk about some of those. So first, there's going to be faster data updates. So with a submission-based publisher, we're sending a set of data in a file on a recurring basis. With the API, we basically unlock real time with our integration. And so how that works is when you update data or add data in our knowledge graph, we will make that corresponding updates in Apple Business Connect via their APIs, and then those changes will appear on Apple Maps. Now, there might be some delays in getting data from the Apple Business Connect account onto Apple Maps. There might be a review period, but know that when you update data in our system, Apple will have that data effectively immediately. Next, there's going to be better or higher data precedence here. So what this means is when Apple shows data on Apple Maps, like a lot of the publishers in the network, they can take data from different sources. And by providing data through a partner like Yext or directly on your own, and we'll talk about that piece later, you have a better data precedence. So your data is much more likely to show up on Apple Maps. So this is the best way to get your data out there and make sure it's correct. Next is we'll have listing statuses and feedback. So in the past, if you looked at an Apple listing in our platform, the only status you would ever see was submitted. So you didn't really know if the data was getting there or not. But now with this API, you actually do get that status back and feedback as to what's going on. So if your listing is not synced or it's processing, you have that transparency. We also have a bunch of status details that will tell you why your listing's not synced. So maybe a photo is the wrong size or something like that. We have a ton of different feedbacks in the platform, so you can actually see what's going on and have full transparency into your listings. Next, there's more field support. So for our listening endpoints, pretty simply, Apple added more fields that we can manage. One of the big ones being photo gallery, and this will allow for flexibility of adding fields in the future. Also, direct links to listings. So in the past, we didn't really have a great way of linking you out to listings. So if you're familiar with our listings UI, in each of those listing rows, if the publisher supports it, we will provide a direct link that you can click out and view that listing. This is now something that was unlocked by having this integration with Apple. And then finally, having this set of functionalities and APIs is great groundwork for future innovation. From what we've seen, with other partners is, APIs are never static. They're always getting upgraded. There's new versions, there's new functionalities. And so having this, sort of groundwork will lead us to more features in the future. And so don't expect this to be the final iteration of the integration. It never is. You'll continue to see improvements over time. That's really great that we now have this opportunity. So let's get into Apple Business Accounts. So to have your locations appear on Apple, you're going to have some sort of an account. There's a few different types of accounts, and by default, we will send data, for our customers to Apple Maps. And there's different ways that we can accomplish this. So I'm going to talk through the different account types and sort of what this looks like. This slide will sort of explain the different versions of this. If you look on the left here, this is the default version. What this means is basically we're taking data from the entire Yext system, so everyone's knowledge graph. And by default, we are syncing that out to the Yext Business Connect account. So we have made an organization or an agency style account with Apple, and all of the customer data is in there by default and thus appearing on Apple Maps. That was what we built as sort of the base integration, and that was flipped on day one. So if you do nothing else and you take nothing from this webinar, at minimum, if you have the listings product, your data will appear on Apple this way. Now, there is another way of doing this, and if you want to unlock all the functionalities of the integration, and we'll talk about what those are, you can set up your own Business Connect account, and then you can follow this process called delegation, where basically you give Yext access to manage your account on your behalf. And so if you look at on the right here, the second version, what this will entail is making your own Business Connect account. Then you give Yext access to manage it. And then instead of us syncing data from your knowledge graph into our account, we'll sync it into your account. And data will appear on maps just the same, but there are a few other benefits for setting it up this way. And there's definitely a lot of questions on how to get to this state. So we're going to spend a bunch of time talking through each of those steps and some of the common problems that we see. But first, why do we want to go through making this separate account? Again, you already have the base integration by default. Well, if you make a separate account and delegate to Yext, you unlock a few different key benefits. So first here, you're going to have the highest data precedence. So again, because the data is in your own account and coming directly from the customer themselves, the business themselves, it will have that sort of highest data precedence for appearing on maps. The next is you're interested in showcase posts. So this is Apple's take on social posts. You're going to want to set up delegation in order to unlock this feature. Teddy will talk about this feature a bit more later on, but note this is for US businesses only at this time. And finally, the ability to sync cover photos is also something that's locked behind delegation. So another thing to note there. So again, if you want to have the base setup, so the one on the left, that if you do nothing and just have the listings product, it will work out of the box. But if you want to unlock the full functionality, have your own account, you want to make one and delegate. So now what we'll do is we're going to go through all the steps of making your own account and delegating. So to do this, first you have to go to businessconnect.apple.com. Now these steps, they are documented both on Apple's documentation and in the Yext Hitchhiker documentation. So don't feel like you have to remember them all here. There's quite a few steps to follow, but definitely follow the documentation that's out there. And I'll just try to help go through these and talk about some common cases people run into. So the first thing you want to do when you get to here is you need to understand which type of business you are. So as you can see from the screen, there are really three get started buttons. There's this top one, which is meant for more of a small business type of setup. So if you have less than 25 locations of the same brand, you're going to want to use this small business flow and click get started, this big blue button here. However, if you're more of an enterprise or chain brand, again, if you have 25 or more locations in the same brand, you want to use this setup flow down here. So make sure you're clicking the right button. If you click the top one, it'll take you into the small business flow. If you click this bottom left one down here, it will take you into the enterprise flow. There is a third option. So if you're more of a partner operating on behalf of companies, you can choose this third option to the right. We're going to go through that one probably in a separate session because that one's a bit more complicated. But right now, we're going to focus on the enterprise flow. The small business and enterprise flows are pretty similar. The enterprise flow just has a bit more verification, but we'll talk through the enterprise one today. So when you click that button on the bottom left to get started, you'll probably see this screen where basically you have to sign in with an Apple ID. For here, you're going to want to use an Apple ID associated with your business. So for example, at Yext, it's associated with my Yext email address, not my personal email address. So whichever business or Apple ID you want to use for your Business Connect account, you're going to want to log in here. If you don't have one, you should make one. And if you forgot your password, if there's an old one, you can use this password recovery. But you will need this Apple ID to access and create your account. Once you set up your Apple ID, then basically you will proceed through the account setup steps. The first one here is just providing your base company details. So these are things like your company name or your phone number or your DUNS number. There's a bunch of questions around the DUNS number piece. So this is basically a standard Dun & Bradstreet number. If you're not familiar with that, it should be something that your company has available to you. So you might need to ask around to find this. And it's also a bit more complicated to find these outside of the US as well. But there are lookup tools to find these, and it's a pretty standard number that you should be able to find for your company. Then you also need to provide one of your brands. So the brand/business object is a little bit confusing in Apple. The way to think about this is you have your company, which is your whole account. Within that, you have one or more businesses or brands. And we'll talk about this more later, but the tricky part is brands are country specific. So for example, for Yext, we operate in multiple countries. So we have one brand for Yext US, and we'll have another brand for Yext Germany, for example. So we'll have multiple brands set up. To make your account, you just need to add one of your brands. And if you're a single brand, single country company, it's pretty easy. You just add your brand and you're done. Once you've done that, you'll proceed to one of the last setup steps here. This one is probably the most confusing, but here is where you're verifying that you are actually representative of your company. This makes sure that I don't go sign up for a random company's account. I only are signing up for my own company. Now this is a little bit different from say like Google's verification, for example, where that's done at a location level. This verification is done upfront at the account level. So once you get through this verification, you should be all set from here. But there's two options to verify. Option number one is done through your website domain. So how this works is you see this little string here that you can copy. It's called a TXT record. If you put this on your company's DNS server, then what Apple will do is they basically validate that you have control over your website, your company's website. They can see that you put that code there, and then that basically proves to them that you work for that company. If this seems very confusing or technical, I'd recommend clicking on the learn more here and figuring out at your company who manages your website. This is a pretty standard validation technique. So if you find the person at your company that manages your website, they should be able to do this pretty easily. Definitely talk to them. The other option, if you don't have the ability to manage your website like this, whether it's for security reasons or otherwise, is you can go through document review. So what this entails is basically you will upload some sort of document for your company, whether it be like a utility bill or something like that, that says your company name on it, and then that can be approved and to prove that you own the company or you're part of the company. Now, once you've submitted this verification, note it can take Apple like a few days to verify this. So we've seen it take up to 5 days. But once they approve you, you will have a verified account that you have access to. So just to sum that up, you're gonna make sure you click on that first right button to follow the right flow, sort out your Apple ID, and then finally go through these verification steps to make your account. Once you've done that, you should have a clean Apple Business Connect account with a single brand in it. At this point, you're almost done. All you need to do now is basically set up your businesses or your brands, and then share some information with Yext so that we have access to your account. So we'll talk through those steps now once you have your account. So first, what you're going to do is you're going to create your businesses. You had to make one during setup. And again, if you operate in multiple countries or you have multiple brands, you're going to want to make one for each country brand combination. So again, let's say that Yext had some other brand called, Calvin's Business. What we would make is we'd make Yext US, we'd make Calvin's Business US, we'd make Yext Germany and Calvin's Business Germany, and so on and so forth. So it might be a little bit tedious, but you do have to make each of those combinations to get set up here. Once you've done that, you're going to want to share access to Yext. And so to do that, if you go you click on your company name on the sidebar, there's this little shared tab here. And when you're in this shared tab, you can follow this link that says share access. Once you click that, It'll basically prompt you to put in the partner's company ID. So that will be Yext's company ID. The ID is right here. It's also in our documentation, in our delegation guide on our Hitchhiker's website. So you could find that and copy and paste it from there. We'll make sure that this number is accessible to anyone who needs it. Once you've put in that ID, you basically want to select the roles and access. So for this, the role you'll want is admin, and then access. In most cases, you'll want to delegate all businesses. But if for some reason you only want Yext to have access to a subset of your businesses or brands, you can select a subset here. But the easiest way is just to do all if we're managing all of your locations. Then what you do is you click invite. What the invite does is it will basically send us an email, and we'll basically go to that email and we'll confirm. And that means that we officially have access to your account, and you are mostly delegated. Now, there's one last step though that you have to take in the setup once we basically have finished that invite process. And for this, when we make an API call to Apple, we need the company ID and the business ID fields to construct that call. So if we're going to make an update to your locations or add a new location, we need these two IDs to move forward. We use our IDs by default, but if we're using your account, we're going to need your IDs. And so we'll talk through how you can fetch those IDs and put them in the right place. So to get these IDs, what you're going to want to do is go into the individual business that you want to enable on Yext. So let's say, for example, we're going to do Yext US here. If I click on that, what I'll notice is the URL will change, and the URL will follow the following structure. It'll be, businessconnect@apple.com/businesses/orgs/an ID. This first ID that's after /orgs, that is your company ID. That company ID will be the company ID for all of your brands. And then after that, there's businesses/a second ID. This is the ID specific to this business. So for example, this first ID will be the company ID for Yext US, Yext Germany, and so forth. It's a global ID. But each of Yext US, Yext Germany, and other brands will have their own business ID. So you want to make sure that you grab these two IDs, and then you will input them into the knowledge graph, into the company ID and business ID field. This is something you can do in bulk, or you can apply to a template, but there's definitely a bunch of different ways you can manage these IDs in knowledge graph. If you have an integration with the knowledge graph built out, you can add these IDs as fields. They're just standard fields in the knowledge graph. So you can make sure that those IDs are updated automatically for any new locations that you add to Yext. Now, once you've done all of those steps, you will basically be fully done with delegation. So you've made your own Apple account, you've verified it with Apple, you've shared access to Yext, and you have your ID structure all set up. Once you're in that state, then we will sync all the locations in the knowledge graph into your new account. We will continuously provide updates to that, and you've unlocked functionality like showcases. So I'm going to stop there with the setup steps, and I'm going to turn it over to Teddy, who's going to go through functionality on action links and showcase posting, two new features that we've unlocked with this integration with Apple.
Cool. Thank you, Calvin. Great. So I'm here to talk about some of the new, shiny, fun new features of the integration. As Calvin and Roy mentioned, one of the major transitions we made was just switching over the method of delivery on how we get your data to Apple. And that was from a feed to an API. But now we're actually syncing a few other special fields. One of them is action links, and then the other one is showcase posting, which I'll go over right after this. So starting with action links, what is an action link? So if you've ever used Apple Maps before, you might recognize these buttons at the top of a listing. So on the right side here, we have just a screenshot of the Yext office in Manhattan. And you can see some other information about it, such as the hours that it's open right now, the ratings, and then these buttons up here. Most of these are present by default, just depending on what type of information the listing has. So for example, if you have an address, then you'll see a button for someone to get directions. If you have a phone number, you'll see a button for someone to make a call directly to the listing, and vice versa for website as well. Some of these action links are available by default, while others can be managed by Yext and other third-party providers. So an example of this would be this pricing link here. This is actually an example of the type of link that you can sync through Yext using our knowledge graph that isn't available by default. And I'll go over exactly what that looks like in just a few minutes. So what exactly does an action link look like? So in this example, you can see the user has clicked this triple ellipsis here, and it's opened up a list of all the action links. And we can see this listing specifically has an order action link set up. And this action link has 4 main components, three of which are actually visible on the listing. So the first component is just the call to action text. So that's going to be the actual text that displays on the action link. So for this one up here, it's menu. For this one down here, it's order. The next component of an action link is the App Store URL. And what this does is actually you provide a link to the app on an app store, and that will determine what this little icon shows up, what shows up in this icon when someone clicks it. So for this example, someone provided the link to the Yelp app, and we can see that Yelp's logo is actually coming in. If you had your own proprietary app that you manage, you could actually just add the App Store URL as part of your action link, and then Apple will automatically pull in that logo as part of the action link on the Maps listing. Finally, there's the quick link URL, which is actually the link that users are going to be taken to when they click on the action link. And the type of quick link URL that Apple prefers people to provide here is actually a universal link, which you may or may not be familiar with. If you've ever kind of had an experience on an Apple device where sometimes you click a link and it takes you directly to an app that you have installed, or if you don't have the app installed, it takes you to a website. What that is a universal link, which basically understands whether you have the native app installed on your device. If you do have it, it'll directly direct you to the app. If you do not have it, it'll direct you to a web experience on Safari or whatever your preferred browser is. So Apple highly recommends that people include these quick link URLs as universal links so that the users clicking it end up having the optimal experience depending on the configuration of their device. The last component of an action link is actually a Yext only field that we use for internal reference, and that's going to be the app name. This is really used for your own benefit so that in other parts of our system, you know exactly which action link you are referencing. The reason for this is because a business may have multiple orders or multiple pricing call to actions, and we want them to be able to differentiate between the one that leads to Yelp or to DoorDash or some other third party, depending on what they have set up. So there are lots of different types of action links supported. Some of them are universal and some of them are category specific. So just kind of browsing through this list, you can see some of them don't have parentheses around them, such as activities, appointment, or amenities, while others are more category specific, such as delivery for restaurant or delivery for retail. This is just the beginning of action links that are supported. Apple is planning to expand this and shift this list as time goes on. And as Apple changes their schema, we will continue to update the options that are available to our users in Yext as well. So I'll go into exactly how to set up action links in just a moment, but I also want to briefly touch on showcase posting as well, which is probably the most exciting new feature of the Apple Maps integration. So what is a showcase post? So a showcase post is very similar to a concept of a local post on Google or Facebook. These are ephemeral offerings that only last for a certain period of time on a listing. And they are basically used for promotions or special offers or announcements for a specific location. So on the right side here, we have another example of a Yext Maps listing, and we see this from the business section. That's actually where all showcase content is going to live. So this showcase has 4 main attributes. One is this headline, the new wave of customer support. You can provide some additional text. In this example, it's answer questions before they become support tickets. You can also provide a photo and then a call to action. And this call to action is actually very closely tied to the concept of action links we just discussed. And I'll talk in a second just about exactly how those two pieces interact. So again, as Calvin mentioned, showcase posting requires delegation and is only supported for locations in the United States as of now. So in order to unlock showcase posting, you will need to delegate your account to Yext and go through the setup steps that we covered previously. One other nuance about showcases is, unlike other publishers that we support in social posting, all showcases actually need to undergo a review by Apple's support team. So when you are setting up a showcase within Yext, you'll find that you're not actually able to post it immediately, and you can only schedule a post for 72 hours from the time that you're creating it. This gives Apple time to review the post, let us know if they've been approved or not, and then we can pass that feedback back to you in case that there was an issue with the post and it wasn't approved for whatever reason. There's any special reason why a post wouldn't be approved. This validation period is really just to check for standard things like profanity or maybe misalignment of the photo or whatever it might be. So again, going into the specific fields, this slide here actually has the exact character limits. This is all detailed in our showcase reference documentation, which you can find on Hitchhikers as well. Highly recommend, before going in and crafting any content for showcases, that you refer to this documentation to understand exactly what is possible. Although showcases seem very similar to Google local posts and Facebook posts and other publishers we support, there are many nuances to the formatting of the photo, as well as the character limitations and call to action limitations. So highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with that before planning any showcase content. Okay, so call to actions and showcases. So as a reminder, the call to action is this button down here in the bottom left of the showcase. In this example, we have the more info call to action. And there are two primary types of call to actions you can include in showcases. So the first type of call to action is on the left here, and these are available by default for any Apple Maps listing. And what these do is similar to action links. They use core data from the listing. So an example of this would be get directions. So when a user would click that call to action in a showcase, they would simply be taken to an experience where they are being directed to that location. If they were to click the rate us call to action, then they would be directed to an experience native to Apple Maps where they could leave a recommendation or a rating for that location. Certain CTAs actually lead to information that you provide. So the more info call to action will lead to the business website you have set up for that location, and the call now CTA will lead to the phone number that you have set up for that location. Again, the behavior of each of these action links on the left is detailed in our reference documentation that you can find on Hitchhikers. The second type of call to action that you can use in Showcase is actually referencing an action link that you provide in Knowledge Graph. So there are a subset of the large list of action links that we looked at previously that you can actually configure to use in your Showcase posts. That list is here. You can see that we have a handful of the category specific ones, as well as some of the more generic ones. You will notice that not all of the action links from the previous slide are available here. This is just the current limitation. Again, as this list expands and Apple supports more action links within Showcases, we will make sure to make those options available as well. The behavior when clicking an action link that's used as a call to action in a Showcase is that the user will be led to that quick link URL that we talked about previously. So depending on whether the user has the iOS app installed on their device, they'll either be taken to the app experience or taken to a experience in their web browser based on what you provide in Knowledge Graph. And so I'm going to hop into a demo just to kind of pull this all together and show everyone exactly how you can set up both action links and call to actions on Showcases. Great. Jesse, can you just confirm that everyone can see this?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so let's get started with action links. So anyone who's familiar with the Yext platform will recognize this page. This is a knowledge graph profile for a location. The location that we're looking at today is actually just the Yext office at 61 9th Avenue. This is the office that most of us on this webinar are sitting in right now. You'll see all the core listing information like the address, hours, and main phone number. Again, this is all syncing to Apple by default, and these are fields that we've always sent to Apple. Only the method for how we're sending them is changing now. As far as new fields go, we have a new set of fields that you'll find either in the other field section or in a special Apple field section, depending on how your knowledge graph is set up. For this specific account, they are present in the other field section. And this is where you'll see all of the new fields that we have for you to configure your Apple integration. So the business ID and company ID fields were already talked about previously. Those are necessary for setting up delegation. And then you'll also see the Apple Action Links field, which is a new one where you can add those action links we talked about already. So here you'll see the list of different categories. We have that entire list from the slide previously, those industry specific ones as well as generic ones, a URL where you can add the link to your App Store app, and then a field where you can add your quick link. And then finally, the app name, again, is just for internal reference. So we typically just recommend that you use the name of the app. The purpose of this is if you had, 2 action links that were of category pricing, this allows you to easily differentiate between the two. I can add multiple action links if I want. So I can add, there's no limit to how many I can add. And then additionally, whatever the first action link is in this list is the one we will sync as that will be the order that we sync them to the listing. So if you have one that you want users to see or want to be more front and center, we'd recommend just dragging it up to the top using the knowledge graph drag feature. So I'm going to cancel adding that new one because I already have one here. And I'm going to quickly show you exactly how to set up a showcase post and how this action link can actually be referenced in that post. So going over to the posting tab, if I go to listings and then post, I'm going to pull up this other tab because I already have it open. We can see that, alongside the other publishers that we can typically post on, such as Google and Facebook, we also now have an Apple icon here. And similar to Google in the way that when you select the publisher, some additional fields will come up. The same behavior exists for Apple. So if I don't have Apple selected, I just see the standard fields for posting. But if I do select Apple, then I'll see these additional fields where I can specify the headline and call to action for the Apple specific showcases. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to select my Yext location that I was just looking at 61 9th Avenue. Click apply here. I could add some post content here. I could add a photo. I could add a headline. And then I can also add a call to action. And what's going to be interesting about this is you'll see the default call to actions that we talked about that lead to information on the listing. So again, that's get directions will lead to the address, more info will lead to the website, call now will lead to the phone number. But we can also see the call to action that we added as an action link in our knowledge graph previously, and that's the pricing action link. And you can see in the parentheses here, we actually have that app name, Yext location scan. That's being pulled into our showcase UI where we can actually reference that. So if I were to add this as part of my showcase, when someone clicks that call to action on the showcase, they will actually be led to this quick link URL that's provided in knowledge graph. Now, if you have one action link set up on one location and you're trying to make a post across multiple locations, our system will check that they all have a matching action link and basically display the lowest common denominator of action links available to those entities. So if I were to select all the entities in my account, you can see that that action link is now not an option anymore because it hasn't been configured on all my knowledge graph profiles. Now, if you wanted to have that action link configured on all your profiles, you could accomplish this by bulk editing in knowledge graph and adding that as so. But as we previously looked at, this is only set up for the Yext office on 61 9th Avenue. So in order to have access to that, I'm going to have to only select that entity or all the entities that share that same action link. So there's definitely a lot of complicated concepts and similar types of links and ways that they can be used in showcase posting on the listing. So highly recommend that in addition to asking questions here, you also kind of reach out on Hitchhikers and the website to make sure that we get anything cleared up. We've also got some really helpful reference documentation that Jesse will talk about in a few minutes. Cool. And now we can hop into some frequently asked questions and I'll pass it back to Calvin.
Great. So the first one here, do I have to set up an Apple Business Connect account to sync my data to Apple from Yext? No, you don't have to. So by default, we will be syncing your data, assuming you have the listings product, over to Apple via our account. That's something that it's already set up today. But if you want to create your own account and delegate and unlock additional features, then we do recommend making your own account. Next, do I really need to create individual businesses for each brand country combination? Yes, you do. As of right now, there is not the concept of a multi-country brand. There may be in the future, but for now, those need to be created. Do I need to claim my locations once I've set up my Apple Business Connect account? So No, once you've verified your account, what we'll do is we'll just make the locations in your account for you. There isn't really any sort of like additional claiming or verification steps like Google. So it should be much easier in terms of setup.
I can grab this one. This is related to showcase posting. So can you make a multi-publisher post with Apple? So you can still make multi-publisher posts. And what this means is a post across, Google or Facebook or Apple all at once. But the posts on publishers will be restricted to the scheduling limitations of Apple. So if you try to post on Google and Apple at once, you will still be restricted to scheduling a post 72 hours from now. Again, that is to accommodate Apple's review period. If you wanted to make an immediate post on other publishers, we just recommend that you create that post separately from your Apple Showcase posts. Can you use embedded fields in Showcase posts? So no, Apple does limit our ability to include embedded fields in Showcase posts. This is a limitation that may be lifted in the future, but we don't have an ETA on it. For now, Showcase posts should be brand generic, so not have specific location information associated with them. If you're making a post across multiple locations, they should have the same exact content, and we cannot embed fields in those. And now I think we're going to take some time for Q&A.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, Calvin, Roy, Teddy, for presenting all of that to us so far. All that really in-depth information is super helpful. I also want to thank all of you for submitting your questions. We've received a lot in the Q&A module, and it's really exciting to see how engaged you all are and have really thoughtful questions. So definitely keep them coming, whether that's today or whether that is tomorrow when you think of something, and you can reach out to us in the Hitchhiker community or through your account team. So I just want to cover a couple sort of more administrative questions up front before I hand it over to Calvin to take some of the more technical questions. So first thing is seeing a lot of raised hands. Unfortunately, we can't take raised hands. So if any questions you have, please put them in the Q&A module. I don't want to miss any of you. So definitely please type them into that Q&A module so we don't miss your question. Second of all, recording. Yes, we are recording this session. Yes, you will get it emailed to you after if you've registered. And even people who have not registered can access the recording because we're going to put it on our YouTube channel after. So you will get it over email. You can share it with others. No worries there. There's definitely a recording. Terms of slides. So some really exciting news is a lot of that step-by-step guidance we went through, such as with delegation, is all the exact same content that we have in our documentation. So I will share that link with you right now. I put it in the chat. We'll talk about it at the end too, but all of that content is available to you on Hitchhikers. That link I just sent will basically link you out to any other guides or help articles that you might need. And you will have the recording, which will go through the slides. So you will definitely be covered from a content perspective between the documentation and the recording. Let's see. We've been seeing a bunch of partner questions, which is awesome. We're definitely going to set up some separate time to offer partner specific guidance. So please hold tight, and we're excited to offer you that separate session. We'll just have to get that on the calendar. And then lastly, if you've submitted any questions, any requests for assistance for things specific to your account, we'll be following up after the webinar. So please feel free also to reach out to your account team, Post and Hitchhikers, for anything that you need help troubleshooting with, and we will help you ASAP. So I think that covers it for all of the logistics, and I'll pass it to you, Calvin.
All right, there's a ton of questions. We don't have that much time, so I'm gonna try to go through these as quickly as possible. And hopefully I can get to your questions. So first one here, can I update different Apple Maps photo types and descriptions from Yext? So currently the support there are for location cover photos, and then the photo gallery, those will be synced. Descriptions are currently not supported in the API, but potentially in the future. Next one is, what is the anticipated review period for data to display on Apple Maps? So for non-core fields, those we will send to Apple immediately, and you should see those reflect on Apple Maps pretty quickly after that, usually within minutes. For core fields, so if you're changing like your business name or your address, for example, it's a much larger change. Again, we will provide that data to Apple immediately, but it might take them a few hours or a few days to review that change before it appears on Maps. So it really depends on the field here. Next is, will there be a problem if the Apple Maps listing is already claimed? So no, so we're still going to send data to the listing. If someone else may have previously claimed it, they might have higher data precedence, but sort of, and this sort of answers a lot of questions. How Apple's process works is they might take data from multiple sources, whether it's from us or someone else, or from a third party like a Yelp. They'll sort of conflate that data together and have it appear on Apple Maps. Now, data coming from us or coming from directly from you is an extremely high source, so it's very likely that data will appear on Apple Maps. Next is, will the Apple Photo Gallery automatically pull a cover photo out to appear on the listing? For this, we have a specific cover photo field for Apple. So it's two fields there. It's cover photo and it's gallery. The next one is about tracking tags or UTM parameters on Apple listings. There's a few questions about this. As of right now, those are not supported on Apple Maps. So those will actually be stripped out when they're sent to Apple. This might change in the future, but there isn't really a great way to do that tracking currently. Next, another question on photos. So we're seeing issues with photo syncing. So when that happens, I guess, what does that mean? Are all the photos excluded or just some of them? So for this, Apple does have requirements for their photos, just like any other publisher, in terms of size and dimensions and all that. So we will send as many photos as we can, and Apple will just block the ones that don't meet the requirements. So make sure that all your photos do meet the requirements for Apple. Next here, there's a question about the differences between the Apple delegation process and how how Yext works with Google Business Profile. So the difference in sort of setup here is Google Business Profile uses OAuth. That's a pretty standard authorization integration where basically a given user can give access to a platform, to a third-party platform. Apple setup is a little bit different. So their delegation is more around this ID sharing piece. So it is a little bit different than OAuth. So that's how you can differentiate between those two there. Next, let's see. So if we're a smaller business, so we have less than 25 locations, but we might grow into an enterprise business over the course of the next year, which account should we use? So you should use the account that you are applicable for right now at this point in time. So stick with the small business account, and then as you add more locations, we can work on that conversion later on. But if you try to set up an enterprise account with not enough locations, you might see problems. So I would not recommend following that route. This is a question. So their enterprise has many brands. And the question is, do we need to make a separate account for each brand, or can we manage them all within one account? So this is sort of up to you how you want to manage this. If the brands are entirely separate business units, and you can think of them as like different companies entirely, it might be worth having separate accounts if you think they're not all going to operate together in the future. But if the brands are pretty closely connected, it is reasonable, good practice to just make a single account and make a brand for each one. It just depends if you want to have a centralized model or more of a decentralized model.
Calvin, just to add to that, another factor that might go into that decision is the fact that you can add admins to your account. So if the teams are working closely together and you have no problem adding admins to the same account, sharing access to the Apple Business Connect account with multiple folks from across different brands, then you might want to go with one account. But if the teams are more separate, then and you want to kind of separate the access as well, then keeping those accounts separate might be the way to go.
Thanks, Ray. The next here is specific to brand setup for car dealerships. So how does this work if you work with many manufacturers? So for here, I'd recommend just making a brand for each manufacturer, just to keep it clean. If you have specific questions, but there might be overlap, you can definitely work with your account team at Yext for specific advice. But in general, if there are distinct brands like that across different dealerships, you want to have a different brand for each of them. The next one here. So if you're managing a few different brands, so say like different hotel chains, for example, is this okay to do in one account? So if you're a company and you have a bunch of different brands that you operate, that's totally fine to do within one account. If you are more of the, we'll say like agency or partner model, where you're managing maybe like SMB locations on behalf of someone else, or even a small number of chains, that you'll probably want more of the partner agency style account. And we'll have a separate session to talk through all of that later and what that means. Can we sync multiple Apple Business Connect accounts with one Yext account? And if you can, is there a limit? So yes, you can, and there isn't a limit here. So if you remember in the delegation process, you'll need to share access with Yext for each of those accounts. And that's something you just have to go through manually one at a time. And additionally, when we're sending out API calls, we don't really care if we're sending calls to to one account or to many accounts for different locations. Just remember that when you specify the company ID and the brand ID or the business ID, you make sure you have the right IDs and the right Yext locations. And so, location 1 can use one ID set of IDs and sync to the first account. Location 2 can use another set of IDs and sync to a second account. That'll work just fine for us. All right, there's a question about delegation here. So once we delegate access to Yext, do we need to add in the company ID and business ID, or does it automatically happen? You do have to add that to your account. So again, there are many ways to do this. You can do this just by going to a location and editing the IDs on the location profile. You can set up a template. You can set up an API integration where you store those IDs somewhere and sync them to us. You can do a bulk edit. So there's lots of different ways for you to manage those IDs. But yes, there is a step to actually put those into our platform. But once you've done that, then you're done with that location's IDs forever. Can we control a sort of a price field? That is not something that exists today that we can control, but maybe in the future. This one's for Teddy. Are you able to still use the action link functionality without having an app to point to? So basically, can you drive to a website rather than an app?
For an action link, you cannot. You need to have an app. If you are using a call to action and showcase, you can make it just drive to your website. Again, there are call to actions and showcases that are not action links. Only those you can use without an app.
All right. So here's another question about operating in multiple countries. So the question was, do I need to make a separate Apple account for each one? Again, this is similar to what we talked about before. You can make one account and you can have different brand country combinations in that one account. Or if you want a very distributed access, you can make multiple accounts. It really depends on how close knit those business units are and how you want that user access to function. But in general, one account is usually the most simple here. This one's also for Teddy. So for action links, there's a book functionality. Is this only for hotels, or will it work for other types of verticals that might have a book functionality?
I believe this one is only for hotels as of now.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to sort through these questions here. So one here is it's about Yelp reviews and photos. So as of right now, Apple will show or photos and reviews from Yelp. But if a business delegates to Yext, basically what happens? So in that case, If you have photos on Yelp and you have photos, in Yext, Apple will show a combined set of those photos. Again, they want to have the most complete listing information in here. So if they see good photos coming from Yelp and good photos coming from Yext, they'll want to have both of them. As for reviews, there's nothing that is available in the API with respect to reviews at this time. So you will still see things like Yelp reviews or that default Apple rating system that you might see on listings. What else do we have here? There's a question about do I have to list my address on an Apple listing? As of right now, address is required. So if you are a service area business that wants to hide your address, then that's not going to work well on Apple Maps today. But again, that might be something that changes in the future. All right, what else do we have here? Yeah, so if you have a location that's currently already on Apple Maps via some third parties, so say like a Yelp or a Foursquare, will Yext data replace that data? So how this works is, again, there's a conflation process here, so Apple can take data from multiple sources. Our data that's sent by us or the data that's sent by you via us delegated is a very, it's just one of the highest quality of sources. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will always overwrite something else 100% of the time. Again, if the data that we have is wrong, but it is seen as a very high source. So in general, that you can count on this. What else is in here? So who is the best person to contact at Yext for support for the new Apple integration? So if you can't find the help that you need either in our documentation or in Apple's documentation, and there's nothing useful in the Hitchhiker community, you can definitely feel free to reach out to your support team, your account team, or to the Yext support teams for help with the integration. We have a lot of people standing by to help out on this if you do need help. See what else here. So one is, we were told the delegations feature is not yet available. Is this true? Nope, the feature is available. We have many brands who have delegated to us today or even did so weeks or months ago. That is something that is available. Maybe you're referring to more of the agency or partner style account. If so, that will have a separate session on where we can talk about this. Is there additional cost to an Apple Business account? No. So operating your Apple Business account there's no additional cost. Obviously, you need to have the listings package with Yext in order to sync data to it. But making an account does not introduce any additional costs.
Yeah, Calvin, as you go through the rest of the questions, just going back to the support question, I know there were some specific questions submitted about particular issues. If you are having any type of issues with the setup flow on Business Connect or verification or anything else, please reach out to your account team or your support team, and we will work with you on these specific issues to resolve them.
All right, I'm going to go through two more questions here quickly. So one of them is, will I be able to reply to reviews left on Apple? As of right now, that's not supported functionality. So again, Apple has reviews as a combination from Yelp reviews, but also they have this sort of yes, no rating system. Right now, there's no API support for that. If there is in the future, we'll happily integrate with it, but it's not supported today. And the next is, will Yext be able to identify and remove duplicate listings with the integration? So as of right now, we don't have a mechanism for searching for those duplicate listings. So it's not something that will be added to our duplicate suppression product by default. If you do notice, though, that there are duplicate listings out there, so there's an additional representation of your business in two listings, please send those to us. So talk to your account team and give those over to us. We want to try to get those resolved for you and fixed on more of a one-off basis. So if you see those, definitely say something. All right, we're a few minutes over time. I'm going to stop there for questions, and Jesse can go over a lot of the resources that we have to help everyone out. If we did not get to your question, there were a ton of questions. We have tons of documentation here. Reach out to your account teams for help, and we will do that follow-up session for the more of the partner use cases in the future.
Yes, thanks, Calvin. Yeah, I just want to end here so that you can hopefully feel comforted by the fact that we have such robust documentation specific to this new integration, specific to all of the topics we covered today. I just shared all the links in the chat. You can find this on our Hitchhiker website, all of the documentation links to each other where relevant. It should be really, really helpful. So please take a look. It will probably answer most questions that you have. But again, reach out if there's anything that you're missing, talk to your account team, talk to us in the community. And I just want to say thank you everybody for joining today. This has been such a highly engaged audience, and we're happy that you were all as eager to take advantage of this new integration as we were excited to build it. So thank you all so much. And a big thank you again to Apple as well. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks.